Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And with that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
Hi, I'm Katherine.
And I'm Xerrah, and we are
The Dark Mother.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Give us that Tinder profile of your roles in the band and what you do.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of the brains behind the operation.
Same.
I sing and I write the songs and I play ukulele. And I've been playing music. I mean, I've always been a vocalist my whole life. Mm-hmm. It was always my dream to be a pop singer. And then I got older and then I was like, I'm a little bit too sad to be a pop singer.
Fair.
So yeah, my music kind of transformed as I got older. But yeah, it's always been my goal to be a singer. And then I finally found people who wanted to do my music.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And what about you?
I grew up, playing different instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I kind of found my spark for stand-up bass
mm-hmm.
and bass in general, but I do love both of them a lot. And so this project's been a really nice way for me to explore just how expressive you can be with minimalism. And stand-up bass has a lot to offer as far as nuance and, the type of auditory aesthetic that you can get from one instrument.
No, very much so. I'm a bass player myself, so
nice.
I have a lot of respect for anybody who will willingly bring such a large instrument anywhere with them, because it's quite an experience, but it definitely has a particular sound you can't really get anywhere else. So I dig that. But let's go ahead. We'll start with you again and we'll go backwards. What got y'all into music initially?
I don't think it was really a choice for me. My father owned a record store in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
70s and
hey, we love record stores.
Yeah, it's true. So this is all very familiar for me. Just being surrounded by records and just a deep music appreciation, and he was thankfully into a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. So, while I grew up listening to rock and roll and stuff, there's plenty of other stuff for me to listen to, plenty of classical and jazz. And so I really think it's probably my family piano mm-hmm. that really solidified everything, because it has such a deep, dark, rich sound. Mm-hmm. And I would just play for hours and hours and hours as a kid, just exploring, the keys top to bottom and really finding that it was the only thing that felt satisfying. There's just kind of like a hunger inside of me to feel more visceral, and music has a way of bringing that out of people, especially acoustic instruments, I feel.
Very much so.
Undervalued and how visceral they are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And did your dad play any instruments, or was he just the owner of a record shop?
Nope.
Which, is pretty cool in its own self.
Very much just a music appreciator. My mom did drag me along to choir.
Okay.
So, I'm not religious as an adult. But,
yeah.
I didn't really have a choice as a kid. And so I was like, if I'm going to go, then I'm going to sing.
Oh, okay.
So I got the opportunity to start as a soprano when I was a very young kid. And then I actually went through all the different sections,
Oh, dang.
where my voice started getting deeper and eventually I ended up singing bass.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that explains how you're able to do such rad harmonies. I dig that.
Thank you.
And then what about you?
Yeah, I had a musical dad, and so he definitely had an appreciation for music that, kind of affected our whole household. But he never like pushed any of us to be musicians ourselves. He was kind of like I do this, but you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But there was just a lot of music that happened in our house, and so I decided very early on, I was like, this is what I want to do. And this is like, I would train in my bedroom for literal hours. It's probably the most dedicated I've ever been to anything. Was choreography and singing and just practicing my instrument, which was my vocal cords. And then as I got older, I realized that it's a lot easier to find opportunities to sing when you know how to play an instrument.
Very much so.
And so I was like, and my brother, he found out I was in a band when I was like 14 or 15. And so he gifted me my first guitar.
Nice.
And I was like, I guess I'll learn how to do this. And then I never got very good at it because bar chords are hard. And so I was like, I don't have the determination to get good at this. And then I picked up the ukulele and I was like, oh, I could do this. And even though it's not my preferred instrument by any means, like if I could play guitar or even piano, I would love to be good at those things. But again, don't have the determination.
That's fair.
I just want to sing. So.
Yeah. And the ukulele is a very good at accompanying voice instrument.
Absolutely.
It definitely works well at just kind of being in that space. So, and it's so small. So easy to bring places. Yeah.
We're literally the absolute opposite.
Yes,
and
very much so.
Kind of comical. I show up with my itty bitty little ukulele and he's got his big giant bass. And it feels like we're just like a comedy duo when we first show up.
What you should do is build in the case for the upright bass, you should build a little space that the ukulele can go in. So that way you pull that out and then you open up this little hatch and you pull out this ukulele.
We should get a baby sling for it.
Oh, yeah. Little baby Bjorn.
That'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And it sounds like y'all kind of had pretty sturdy musical backgrounds growing up, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then how did the band come to be?
Well, I asked him. So we've known each other for 13 years now. And we met because I was the manager of, I don't know how long you've been in Vancouver, but there used to be an all ages music venue called Pop Culture. And it was really freaking cool. And so that's how we met each other. Was I was working there and his band, the New Jangles, they would play there all the time. And so we got to know each other that way. I got to know other members of his band, which one of them is his brother. And I threw out onto Facebook one day, I was like, this was 12 years ago. I was like, does anybody want to start a psychobilly band? And his brother was like, my brother plays stand-up bass and he loves psychobilly.
Perfect.
And so we had tried to start a psychobilly project that long ago and then it just never panned out. But we just knew each other. And when I knew I wanted to start a project that was more string heavy, because originally the Dark Mother had violin, stand-up bass, piano, and hand percussion. And I wasn't playing an instrument because that was always my goal. I was like, I don't want to be playing anything. And so when I knew I wanted a string heavy ensemble, obviously he was the person I reached out to. And thankfully he said yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, before we get into what y'all do in the present day, I have a couple of questions that are just show continuity questions I ask everybody. And for these, you can kind of answer whoever thinks of it first. But this first one, it's one we ask early, it's one we ask often, and it's definitely a crowd favorite. What was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
Do you know?
I'm very curious about your answer because, grew up in a record shop.
I know, because I didn't really have to buy albums.
Yeah.
Just always there, or my dad would have already bought them and he would just sneak by and go burn it onto my computer later. But when I think the first album I actually bought was The Living End, Modern Artillery, which is their psychobilly band from Australia.
Oh, yeah. And what about you?
I hate that my answer is this, But I'm pretty sure it was like the first Good Charlotte album.
Okay. Okay.
Pretty sure that was the first album I ever bought with my own money.
Rad. I don't think I've gotten that answer yet. So that's exciting. That's exciting.
I'm kind of embarrassed to say that.
No, that's all right. Trust me, we all have interesting first choices. I mean, I guess you circumvented that because you had so much access to cool stuff from the beginning.
Like my brother too, like he would just bring albums. So like I was very fortunate in not having to buy them most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure I also own that album. So I'll be right there with you.
Nice.
And then what was the first live show you each ever went to? That was like specifically one you wanted to go to. So like you saw it was happening, got tickets and went to it.
Necromantics for me. It's another psychobilly band.
Oh yeah.
It's like, so used to my dad taking me to shows. Some of them were great. Some of them were like, okay, Dad, sure.
Yeah.
But, it was the first time I got to go without my parents. Seeing everybody in the spiky jackets and the pompadours, like, skyscrapers. It was like, oh, these are my people. These are my weird, like, angry people that just want to exist in this, like, intense energy together. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
See, we are destined to start a psychobilly project at some point. It's gonna happen.
Dark Mother will just become psychobilly band eventually.
Maybe it might happen. For me, it was actually The Taste of Chaos.
Okay.
It was like a big conglomeration of all the screamo bands. Do you remember Taste of Chaos?
I do, yes.
I lost my mind because it was the first one they ever did, and it was when the Used and My Chemical Romance were still friends. And so they performed Under Pressure together.
Oh, nice.
And it was just, it was so cool. It was so cool.
That's a really special moment for sure.
Yeah.
Who were all the headliners?
Yeah, it was My Chemical Romance, The Used, Kill Switch Engage, and I think it was the next year 30 Seconds to Mars was there.
Gotcha.
But I don't remember the other ones at this moment because I was really there for MCR.
Fair, yeah.
Used, obviously.
I mean, those are three powerful names just to have there in general. So
yeah, as like a first concert, it was pretty insane.
Yeah. I recently had to dispel this because I'd been saying this was the first one I went to, but it technically wasn't. But one of the first concerts I ever got taken to was Ozfest 2005.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was, obviously Ozzy was headlining, but it was also like Iron Maiden, In Flames, Mudvayne, and Black Label Society.
That's insane.
Yeah, so that was like the first concert I ever went to. And that was just the headliners. Like Rob Zombie was headlining the earlier in the day stage. Like Arch Enemy opened it. Like it was a really cool experience. So yeah, having like a festival kind of be your first big moment really kind of like opens your eyes to a really interesting potential in music. So I can relate.
Yeah, I think like the first couple of years of me going to concerts, it was just festivals.
Yeah.
Taste of Chaos, Warped Tour, stuff like that, because that was just what was happening at the time and tickets were so cheap.
Yeah, it was a good way to like see your favorites and also experience new groups. Like that's how I found out about Coheed and Cambria.
Oh, yeah.
Like my buddies were like, hey, we're going to the Download Festival. And I was like, I don't even know half these bands, but I'll go. And then I saw them. I was like, what is this?
Pretty amazing.
How is he doing all these things at once?
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But that's enough about me. Let's get back to y'all. And we're going to go ahead and move more towards the present day. But first, we're going to get a super easy one out of the way. How'd y'all pick the name?
So this is where I start to sound like a crazy person. So the Dark Mother, obviously, like if you can't tell, I'm probably kind of wooey. So the Dark Mother, the archetype of the Dark Mother is like this warrior goddess figure, right? Where it's very much like take no shit, very like anti-patriarchal stuff. And I would like to say that's just why I chose the name, but it was actually because I didn't think I really knew what the Dark Mother was. But there is this fairy oracle deck that I have, and oracle cards are like tarot cards, for anybody who doesn't know. And I had this fairy oracle deck that I was, using religiously during that period of time in my life. And the card that I kept drawing was the Bright Mother. And the Bright Mother is very like this loving, nurturing, maternal force of just like, I'm here for you, I love you. And it was just this constant reminder of like, girl, I got you. Like, stop worrying so much about your life. And so I just developed like a very strong affection for that card. And so when I went to decide on a name for my project, which was gonna be about, my mental illness and my struggles in life. I wanted to kind of give a nod to that support system. And I was like, well, I can't do the bright mother because that doesn't really suit me. And I was like, well, what's the opposite of bright? I guess it's dark. So that's how it started. But thankfully there is that goddess archetype that I understood more later. And I was like, oh, it's actually kind of perfect.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Unintentionally perfect.
Yeah, no, that works out great. That's awesome. And then I guess how would you guys describe your writing process? How does that go about? Because I know you said in the beginning you mainly do most of the writing, but how does that come together for like putting a whole track together?
Well, I have a brain baby, and then I give the brain baby to my musically inclined partner, who because I don't know music. Like I never took music theory. I didn't take music classes. Everything I do is completely self-taught. And so I just assume that he knows what to do with the things that I say. And thankfully he does. But yeah, I just intuitively, write something that feels good, and then he makes it better.
Gotcha. And I'm always interested when it's like the main person is somebody who isn't like taught in theory, and then working with, I assume, somebody who is taught in theory.
Right. Yeah, I do have a bit of music theory under.
Do you ever hear what she brings to you and go, structurally this shouldn't even make sense, but it does?
It's interesting because it's always a mixed bag, and I think one of the things that I really appreciate is how much her writing style has changed since we've started playing together. Because there's definitely never a point, she's too good of a vocalist to write chords that don't make sense. Or I guess that's auxiliary to what you're saying. It's hard to write things that are accidentally good. Especially when you're writing them on the ukulele and you have specific chord shapes that you're using, so she's going to follow, the chords are a vessel for the melody, right? And so that really opens me up when I get a song from her. It's okay, so what are we going to accentuate here? Is this standard minor? Is this harmonic minor? Do I really want to pull in some more dissonance? Because I kind of have control over that.
Gotcha.
General bass players do, right?
Very much so.
You control the chord so often where, nope, this is a 6th chord now, or I'm putting the minor 7th in here. You have all these options to kind of change the way the chords hit. But I'm also, not only am I the bass player, a lot of times I play with a bow, and so I'm trying to hold the rhythmic, part of the song down. But then since she's doing chords on the ukulele, she's kind of already doing that. So more often than not, I'm going back and forth. I'm going back and forth between counter melodies and the upper to higher register. I play a lot more in thumb position than I ever thought I would.
Gotcha.
But then, it's about trying to hold up these sweet, tense moments and then bring them back down to something that's more guttural. And then kind of going back and forth and flowing. It's really, really affected by her vocal performance and the energy she's putting in. It's okay, right now, I need to go hard staccato, just almost I'm not doing much musically, but rhythmically and intensity's there so that her voice can shine. And then when she's not singing, then we kind of switch.
Gotcha. Well, I guess that makes sense because, as a duo, especially a duo without a drummer,
right?
Somebody has to carry kind of the pulse. Exactly. While the other person carries more of the melodic elements of it. And I was checking out some of y'all's music, and that's definitely kind of the core setup for it. I really enjoyed that part of it. But we'll get into that in a moment. Sticking with the writing process a bit, when you're writing, do you have a certain vibe or style you imagine every time, or do you just kind of do whatever happens?
It's very much just whatever needs to come through. And usually I don't feel inspired to write unless I'm feeling very intensely somber feelings, or it's something that I need to create a channel for experiences that I've had in the past, right? So it's usually through the lens of trying to translate trauma, right? That's a lot of what the Dark Mother is giving a voice to those experiences and normalizing them, right? So yeah, I'm not one of those people that will just sit down and write a song because I feel like it's time to write a song.
Yeah.
It's usually inspired by, usually during those times I get this really, this deep knowing of like, it's time, it's time to transmute this into something. And then that's when usually a melody will just like settle into my head. And when it doesn't leave, I'm like, okay, what are we supposed to do with this? And what are the words that need to come with it? And so yeah, I wish I could be one of those people that's like, I just write because it feels good and I have this creative outlet, but it really is just it's more of an outlet for my feelings than just creativity.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who kind of only get to like write and exist in that space as well. I think that, where it comes from is, ultimately it's going to come from wherever it comes from. And it's not to say people who are just like, well, I feel like writing because it's Tuesday, doesn't mean they make better music. You know what I mean? It all comes from a place of creativity. Now, I guess since you dominantly do the writing and you dominantly do the supporting after it's already kind of been written, do you ever run into any like creative differences, or like does like somebody bring something to the table where the other person's like,
Why don't you answer this?
Me. I mean, I think it's not so much creative differences is, you kind of touched on it before where it's like these songs come through and it's like however they're supposed to be, they are, but then I kind of have to decide how they're supposed to be because you're coming through with a melody and a ukulele part, chord progression, and then it's kind of like sometimes I'm like, well, what do I do with this? Like there are songs.
I'm like, just sprinkle your magic. I don't know.
just
do it.
Just make it bass.
Because like there are times where I'm not even playing and I'm using the bass like a drum. There are times where I'm using the bow through the full thing and I'm just on the higher strings. It's sweet, it's high, it's like I'm a cello or a viola. And then there's times where, I'm pulling back and I'm like leaning into more like the jazzier, like pizzicato, like full finger, lower bass notes. And it's like, what do you want here? But I really just try to lock into the words. And sometimes, I mean, we've had songs that we go through iteration after iteration, where it's like they sound nothing like how the original version sounded. And we've still scrapped like all 4 versions. And still like trying to figure out like, what is this song supposed to be? What's it supposed to look like? And I do appreciate that we're not afraid to just kind of put a song in the closet. Like we just kind of refinished a song our last practice where like we haven't played it in years. Since we were a 5-piece, we started as a 5-piece. And I finally got to a point. It was like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do with this one. But I was not sure until last week what I was supposed to do with it.
Yeah, I don't think we really have creative differences as much as it's like just general frustrations of like, of him being like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, but I don't necessarily know what I want until you do something. And then I can tell you whether that's it or not, And so it's more of just like, I don't.
Which can be really frustrating because like if I'm trying something complex, it's like I have to do it over and over again until it sounds passable to really know if it sounds good. And I might have just wasted weeks.
Hey, that's the process though. I think that's, at the end of the day, even if it doesn't end up working, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find something in there that does. So even if you spend like 3 weeks on this over complex piece and then you're like, well, I just go back to root notes, but I add in that one tiny little it always kind of like brings it to the forefront in the end. So as much as it's time spent, I don't think it's ever really time wasted.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you never know when you'll need one of those tricks later. You're like, oh, I did that thing, but it didn't work in this song.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try that thing in this other song. Like,
or even live, you're like, wait, I remembered this one. Or like you accidentally do a tiny piece of it because you're just not thinking about it. You're going through the motions. You're like, wait, that was it the whole time.
Yeah, it's usually some amalgamation of like, try to just, or not try, right?
Yeah.
When it just happens, you get those accidents, those happy accidents.
Yeah, very much so. Now, like I was saying before, I checked out some of your music, and it's really cool. It's very like moody. It's very like, as you described, kind of in that like darker energy. But there was one track in particular that you did more recently, or at least it was uploaded more recently onto Spotify or onto YouTube, called Scalped. And that was an interesting track. It like, you know, because like I checked out the other stuff that was on Bandcamp, and that was very much in the same vein. But Scalped was a little more, I don't want to use the word bubbly because it's not the right word, but it had this like this bounce to it. It had a little bit more of the kind of like the movement. And I guess what was the inspiration to move that direction, or what can you tell us about that track?
Well, I think that was when I was still aspiring to start a psychobilly band.
Okay.
Because that's actually one of the first songs that I ever wrote. And yeah, and it's just one of those songs that it definitely is one of the more like upbeat songs that we have. That one, and also we have another song called Meat Bones.
Oh, good name.
Yeah. And so those two are very much in that like more.
Right. I even do
intense.
some psychobilly slap on them, you know.
Now, real quick, can you describe what psychobilly is for the people who don't know?
Right. It's like, it's a weird mix of like, so there's a genre called rockabilly, right? Which you would probably equate with like Greasers, or kind of that like 50s rock and roll, like before electric bass was as popular as it is. So it's kind of this weird mix of like country and bluegrass, surf, and like early rock and roll.
Yeah.
And psychobilly is kind of like the evolution of that towards more like punky, like darky, like just kind of energy, right? Where it's like, you know, it's often faster, it's often more discordant,
More thrashy.
It'll have elements of metal, but I would probably equate it much more to punk. Just because I lean much more into the punk than metal, personally. But it's like, you know, it's still got that organic, you know, the clicking sounds that a bass can make, and all the different subdivisions you can get with a stand-up bass are really integral to psychobilly. In just kind of like creating that thrashy, you know, like you got all these like weird triplets going on underneath the music. So I don't know, how would you describe psychobilly?
I think that's exactly what I would have said.
That's what I would have said too. All right. Well, thank you for going through that. Like I said, I was just a little curious for more of the definition of it.
Yeah.
But now I would like to know, and y'all can answer in whichever order for this, what are some of your favorite tracks to perform?
That's a you question.
I mean, I would say there's a new song, I guess it's not brand new. It's like we finished it recently, but a lot of it is older. What's that song called? River. Does it not have a name?
Which one? Our most recent one? Sweet.
Yeah.
The Sleep My Sweet.
Sleep My Sweet. And it's just very, I think a lot of our music has kind of a lullaby-esque quality to it, that like dark lullaby. And that song in particular, I feel like it has a really powerful journey. And like I still like get emotional like when I play that song.
Oh, you gotta make me emotional. Because that's actually like my favorite song at this point that I've ever written, and very excited about it. And it feels like the most mature thing I've ever written, and the most true to myself, and the most mature. It's like very much where I feel I'm at in my life.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm definitely have to come check it out so I can hear y'all playing it sometime.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna be here at Ronald Records next month.
Oh yeah.
So
hell yeah. Well, we'll definitely have you plug that at the end of this. Before y'all play live, do you have any like rituals or things you do to kind of get in the space to perform?
Well, we always wait to practice the night before, and never anything more than that. So we go months without practicing, and like, oh, we've got a show, we should probably practice. So that's a part of our ritual.
I guess so. Being underprepared.
And just letting the music flow through us, you know, like we really want to be those most authentic conduits without worrying about like structure and
Right. It's not a type of music where it's like, oh, I need to be as technically precise as possible so I can hit as many notes as possible. Like when I come to play Dark Mother Show, it's like, it's almost like better to be a little off balance, because then, especially with a fretless instrument, I'm like, we're going here now. We're going here. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have to feel the space as it happens.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I dig that. And in my old band, we used to practice the day of.
Yep.
And so can confirm, not my favorite move. The night before makes way more sense. Should have just done that.
Right.
Oh, I don't think my hands can handle it. I literally have blood blister now from just playing.
Yep. I always finger picked on bass, so that these two fingers are still just so heavily calloused for the rest of my life. I get that. But now let's go ahead and we're going to move on to some hypothetical questions.
Ooh.
And for these, sky's the limits. The questions are all made up, so the answers are allowed to be as well. But this first one is it's a little straightforward, but it's definitely a fun one. If the band could perform with any other act, who would you want it to be?
Well, I know my answer.
Yeah, I was like, that's definitely a you question.
Yeah, because so much of my inspiration is from artists like Antony and the Johnsons, also Emily Autumn. But Antony and the Johnsons, like if I could open for them, like I finally actually am just seeing them live for the first time. And it's very much like the kind of creative that I want to embody, this person's already doing, right? Of just, it feels like they're just tearing their entire heart and soul out of their body when they perform. And they have such a like evocative, emotive vocal performance that like the music is built around the vocals, which is always what I wanted as well, because like that's my heart, you know, like my heart is in my voice. And so I want my music to support that, which I'm really grateful to have a partner who understands that. Right. So to be in the space with a band like that, who's already doing it and is doing it well and has like the orchestra behind them, that has always been my dream. Like that would be the coolest thing in the world.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. And what about you?
I mean, I don't know if maybe I'm thinking too small here, but I always thought it would be like really good sonically for us to play with Voltaire, especially if Voltaire was traveling with his band, because they do. Because we were talking about who else would you compare us to, and obviously, if you know who Voltaire is, he's kind of like it's very gothy acoustic, kind of like us, but it's also very funny. Yeah, he's very much like poking fun at like everything. Nothing is too sacred to be poked fun at. And you know, musically, you know, when he's playing with the full band, you get the strings and the acoustic instrument with the chords. You know, you get something that's very similar to us. And I think, you know, for being an act that's known to be funny, he is actually capable of writing some really beautiful melodies. And, you know, especially the violin player that plays with him is like, you know, if I could share the same stage with that violin player, I would be in a happy place.
Oh, yeah. And then subsequently, who is a local group that y'all haven't gotten to perform with yet, but you would like to?
Ooh.
That's a good question. I feel like most of the people that we know locally, we have played with.
We've played with a lot of people.
Right. We've both been in Vancouver for
long time. Yeah, especially when we first started in 2019, when we were the 5-piece, we were playing shows constantly. So yeah, I can't personally really think of anybody that we haven't played with that I'd want to play with.
And it's hard to find somebody who aesthetically fits with us.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's modify it then. Who haven't you played with in a while that you would like to play with again?
Yeah, that's a tough one too.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like, you know, there's just like so much has changed in the past like 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm almost trying to think of like bands that I used to play with.
Yeah, I can't really, I mean, that sounds terrible, but I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head.
That's all right. I mean, it sounds like, you know, like you said, y'all have played with so many people and been playing for so long, that'd be a little hard to like handpick one at this point. So,
well, and yeah, we're just very lucky, you know, that we've been able to play with so many different people, and like most of the people that we know that are musicians, like we're on a, you know, good relationship with.
Yeah.
We have a good relationship.
Yeah, because I was very, very active in the music scene, in the local music scene. I was playing open mics like multiple a week. So I've met so many people, played with so many people, and so many of the bands, you know, that we used to play with, like maybe aren't bands anymore or things like that. So, yeah.
No, that's all right.
I know.
Like I said, I mean,
I love playing with our friend Caleb, you know.
Yeah, like Caleb and the Monsters comes to mind just because it feels like they're very, very similar to kind of our approach. And actually, we shared a violinist there for a while.
oh, okay.
As well. So yeah, Caleb and the Monsters, shout out.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. And then for this next one, like I said, they're all hypothetical, so have fun with this. But if the band's music could be the soundtrack for any movie, which one would it be?
I mean, any Tim Burton movie, I'd say. Because, like, my song Razor Blade, I wrote that as a joke, and it was meant to have, like, a Danny Elfman vibe to it. So I would say, yeah, any Tim Burton movies. Well, maybe Batman Returns.
Okay, there it is. Yep.
Just because I have a very specific boner for that movie.
Fair.
So like during, you know, like the Catwoman scene where she's like becoming Catwoman.
Oh, my God.
What song would you put behind that?
Ooh, good follow-up.
That's a really good question. Maybe, I mean, I feel like Razor Blade would be a good choice, but I don't know. What would you think? I'm trying to think
I mean, like Sleep My Sweet.
Sleep My Sweet would.
Because she's like being surrounded by the cats and everything. It's like, it's a weird like mother-daughter.
Or, I mean, What are we thinking?
Oh,
Resurrection
yeah.
would be
Resurrection.
perfect. Because I have a song about, you know, rising from the dead. So I feel like it's like a witchcrafty, like necromancy kind of song. So I feel, either Sleep My Sweet or Resurrection. Yeah.
Hell yeah. No, that's right. And I love that follow-up question. Thank you. I'm going to start watching all the movies so that I can start doing that. And then to wrap up the hypothetical questions, if you could each add an abstract instrument to the band, what would it be? So we're taking like guitar and drums off the table, obviously, you know. But think something out there a little bit.
I mean, I think the harp would be really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Chord.
Or harpsichord. Oh, harpsichord. Can I have both? Can I have harp and harpsichord?
I don't know why.
Hypothetically?
Yeah.
If we had, you know, if I could just clone myself.
Also, if you brought a harp, that would be even bigger than the upright.
Right?
You would be the medium instrument.
I would be like, okay, I know the right staircase. Follow me. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat that. Although, you know, I've always had this idea of like us recording a music video in a church and being able to use the church organ. You know, not for like every song, but there are certain songs it's just, you know, like I said earlier, like I grew up singing in choir and like that just the bigger than life aspect of that is appealing to me.
Yeah, organ's a good one.
Yeah.
And harpsichord and harp. I think that's a good answer.
That's it. That's what we need.
Perfect. Perfect. You're back to a 5-piece. No. All right. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. What can we look forward to between, let's say, now and January? Or, it'll be a new month when this comes out, February.
Well, obviously, we have our show at Ronald Records on August 10th, 6 p.m. And we've talked about getting into the studio and making a proper album of just the two of us. Because when we first recorded our music, it was when we were still a 5-piece. So yeah, like just breaking it all down, just being the two of us. And I mean, eventually that's going to happen.
Right. I definitely, you know, I'm hoping to do some one-off releases of like, we do a lot of alternative covers of like 90 songs, but kind of in our way.
Yeah.
It's something that we've talked about because especially when we play live, like longer sets, you know, or we played weddings before where we were sprinkling a lot of like, you know, 90s classics.
Yeah.
And
it's good to put in the familiar listens periodically.
exactly. You know, it's like whenever you play Creep or something, you're going to have like the one person in the back who's like,
Yep.
I wish I was special.
And I believe, aren't y'all going to be on the upcoming City of Anthology too?
That's
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Shout out Ronald Records.
I'm very excited.
All right. And then for this next one, go and look straight at the camera. Tell everybody how they can find you.
You can find The Dark Mother on Bandcamp, and you can also follow us on Instagram. So if you want updates as to what we're doing, that is the best place to find us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you'd like to put on while you're on here?
I mean, as we were speaking about the anthology that's being put together by Ronald Records, I do want to also mention my other band, Faces in the Woods, is going to be on that anthology as well.
Oh, yeah. All right. And with that being said, we've got one last question to go. But before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second. As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, the final question. And this is entirely up to your interpretation, and you can answer in whichever order you'd like. But what is an album you feel is more on the obscure side? It's a deep cut. It's one not a lot of people would know, but it's one you think everybody should know.
The Night by Morphine.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I would say Emily Autumn's first album, Opheliac. I mean, I feel like she's just not very well known in general.
Yeah.
But her first album, Opheliac, is like, it's perfect.
Hell yeah. Nice. Well, thank you both for those recs. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
And this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Katherine.
I'm Xerrah.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
That's a wrap.
This is not a podcast. This is a show.
Keep jamming.